Yo, what is going on, guys? Jack here, and welcome to episode 8 of our Ruining Manchester City save here on Football Manager 2015. Hopefully you guys are good. Today we're going to be kicking off with a recap. So as you guys all know, we've been doing the yearly updates throughout the most recent episodes. However, as we get further and further into the future, it doesn't really become practical to review every 2 years every episode because, well, we'd be here forever, wouldn't we? So today, we're 5 years in the future. The year is 2025, and we're going to be having a look at everything that's gone on during kind of the absence, I guess, of us not reviewing the game. So let's have a look here. So the first thing that really jumps out at me is the fact that, well, Manchester City are in the Premier League. Shock horror. Last episode we left off, they lost in the playoffs. You can see since then they finished 3rd. They then finished 2nd and got an automatic promotion spot. 3 years ago they finished 9th. Last year, the year before that, or year after that rather, they finished 9th, and the year before this year, and this year they finished 8th. So they've kind of established themselves as a mid-table team. However, what you may notice at the bottom here is Manchester City had 5 points deducted due to violation of budget rules. If only that was the kind of thing that could happen in real life. Anyway, let's take a look at the landmarks just to kick things off. So there is a change in manager. They now have, I guess it's Julian Lopetegui. We'll go with it. Lopetegui. It sounds great, doesn't it? That's definitely not how you say his name, but we'll just call him Julian, or Julian, I guess. Looking at the club as a whole, you can see they're still playing at the City of Manchester Stadium. The rich continental reps, the reps gone back up. And if we look at the fixtures for this season, it looks like they didn't really go on any cup runs. So I guess we'll go back to the landmarks and have a look here at what's been going on. So they failed FFP for this year. They also looks like they failed it for the 2013 year. In fact, looking at it, they might have failed it the last 3 years and this year's hasn't shown up yet, but it's an ongoing issue, the fact that they're failing FFP, certainly. You can see Andre Blake, who of course was vice-captain when they were in the Championship, is now the club captain, still playing in goal, one would assume he is. They're actually conceding quite a lot of goals. He's not really that great a goalkeeper. Looking at it here, you can see that actually there's not been loads of landmarks happen here. They did actually finish runner-up in the FA Cup in 2023. So let's take a look at that, because that may have opened them a gateway into the Europa League. However, looking at it, it looks like the guys who they lost to, who were Manchester, no it wasn't, in fact it was Tottenham who they lost to, or no wait, where is the final? The final's not there. If I go back and forward, there we go, it's reappeared now. Who knows, answers on a postcard as to why that happened, but they lost to QPR. My guess is that QPR hadn't already qualified for Europe, so they got the spot, and as a result Manchester City missed out there. So that looks like it's the closest they've come to silverware. I did notice they'd also lost in another semi-final. So yeah, not a few changes there. There's not been a load of landmarks recently, a few captaincy changes, but with them establishing themselves as a Premier League team, there's not been a whole lot going on. If we look at the manager history, last time we left off, Rosler was in charge. You can see here he actually left after 5 years in charge. He wasn't sacked, he just decided to walk away, it seems, and that was in 2023. And since then, over the last year and a half, 2.5 years. In fact, yeah, you can see there it says year and a half next to the name. Julian has been in charge of the team, and you can see that they've not won anything during his reign. They've not won any cup wins, lost twice in the FA Cup final, and of course there's a few league wins. The major honour for Rosler being winning the Sky Bet League 1, which really kind of sums things up. So all in all, Manchester City have actually bounced back quite well. If we look at their top players this year, you can see that they've got a few players here. Mofokeng, South African international regen, seems to have come through. I've never seen this guy before from Norway. I know I have a few Scandinavian viewers, so I'm sure this Zyma guy is probably a familiar name to you, potentially. Maybe you can let me know if it's a bit of an odd thing to see him playing in the Premier League. If we look elsewhere, Patrick Roberts playing for them, quite a well-established player. Also worth noting that Zuccolini still playing, and been at Manchester City for a number of years now, played through the highs and lows, and been a quite key player for them. So if we take a look at the transfer history, let's have a look at how things kind of panned out. So the last review we did was the end of the 2020 season. So looking at it here, they actually spent £9 million on John Joe Kenny from Watford, which seems like a pretty large amount for not that great a player. They actually spent £26 million, and this is the year where they finished 3rd in the Premier League, missing out again. They also brought in Mahoney, Connor here from Blackburn it was, and they've also got a few players like Jack Robinson, who, I don't know why that name rings a bell. Oh, of course, because he's played for Liverpool, that's why it would ring a bell with me being a Liverpool fan. You can also see they signed a Japanese regen, and I'm a big advocate of the Japanese regens in FM. Looks like they got this guy in Ichikawa, who is now playing for Wolves. Elsewhere, they actually sold Holmgren, who I think they signed the previous year for quite a lot of money. They signed him a few years prior, actually, for £15 million, but then they sold him on for a 50% loss to Barcelona, where he never played. He then went to Inter, never played. Now he's at Chelsea, playing very rarely. So they lost a lot of money on him. If we look at the next year, they signed Alan Granger for £19.25 million. And the reason that's quite funny is because Alan Granger works at Sports Interactive. He is one of the face in the games. If you don't know, in FM, there's like an Easter egg, I guess, where people who've worked on the FM for the year are put in as potential regens, and Alan happens to work at SI. I think he's the head of, does a lot of the fan site stuff actually, which is why I recognise him. But kind of interesting to see him doing well there. If you want to learn more about the facing the game stuff, there's a video on my channel all about Easter eggs in Football Manager, and that is kind of covered in quite a lot of detail there. Elsewhere, they bought in Dele Alli on a free. They actually spent a hell of a lot of money. They spent £239 million in the 2021-2022 season. I'm just curious, was that their first year in the Premier League? In fact, no, that was the year that they got promoted. So you'd hope they'd get promoted spending that much money. Really, they spent a lot of double figure numbers. They spent £33 million on this guy Cordoba, who is Colombian. They also brought in Ross Blake for £27 million, a regen. They must have signed him very early on. They signed him for £27 million at the age of, how old would he have been there? 17. That is a crazy feat to play. But he's still playing in the first team, so perhaps it's worth it. And they also brought in this guy, Boljevic, who is a Montenegrin international, I believe. Yeah, Montenegrin. So they spent some ludicrous money there, and they only finished 2nd even with all this money spent, which is just mad really for a championship team. Just a reminder that at the end of this series I will include a save game, so if you want to look through all of these players in detail, you'll be able to. I'm sure you guys can appreciate that with the sheer number of players there, it's not realistic for me to go through all of them. Anyway, in their first year in the Premier League, they spent another £100 million. I just want to check if they have a sugar daddy in charge. They don't. They just seem to be spending ludicrous amounts of money. I'm trying to work out how they have as much money as they do. But either way, they threw even more money out for their first year in the Premier League. £111 million spent here. And this guy, Adam Dele, the big transfer that they signed, he doesn't look like anything too special. Hungarian, signing for £27 million from Real Madrid, who made a £26 million profit off his sale. On the outs, did they sell anyone of real note? Not really. They just seem to have thrown lots of money. I guess they've done exactly what I didn't do in terms of I wasted loads of money. Now they're just throwing money and hoping it comes good, and it kind of has come good for them here. You can see they spent £43 million this year. They did actually make a few sales. They sold on this guy who's a Korean international. They sold him for £14 million. They also sold Ken Mulholland to Spurs for £12 million, which doesn't actually seem like that bad or a deal for whoever bought him in. Interesting to note, Cordoba here, who they signed for £33 million, was released 2 years later, so that's a really not money well spent, I guess you could say. And then in their most recent year, this year that we've just covered, we've already covered a lot of these players actually, but they didn't spend as much this year, but they still failed FFP. Or at least the budget requirements. I'm not sure what budget requirements they would be. It could be to do with the amount of money the team's losing. You can see here they've got some players on pretty high wages, considering kind of where they are. They're not even in Europe, and you can see their wage budget's £2.8 million, which is actually quite high for a team in their position. But anyway, I think that's going to wrap things up for today, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. looking at it here, doing okay, Manchester City. They've slowly progressed upwards. It'll be interesting to see in another 5 years if they kind of are back challenging for the title. Given the amount of money they're currently willing to spend, I kind of feel like that should happen, depending on obviously if they spend that money wisely. But yeah, it'll be intriguing to see how it pans out. Hopefully I'll see you guys in the next episode. If you've enjoyed this video, smash the like button. Greatly appreciated. If you've got any comments about anything that I didn't notice that you noticed on screen, leave it down in the comments. And other than that, it is me, Jack, and I'll talk to you guys in a bit. I'm out.